Hello. Welcome everybody in Substack world, in YouTube, in Twitch, wherever you're getting us from. How's it going, everyone? It's the Sick of the Show with a special afternoon episode, and I'm bringing on my new friend, your weirdo friend, um, and we're just gonna call them weirdo or them throughout the
Yeah.
show. Um, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everyone in my audience. We're going to be talking about sexual orientation, the dangers of the stupidity of people like Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes, and how they are toxifying cultures that don't need to be toxified and have been toxified and vilified, and they're making it even more toxic. Or they're actually turning it toxic, not making it more toxic because it's not toxic. Real sexual orientations and identities aren't toxic. This is, though.
Yes.
And so I wanted to bring on my new friend, your weirdo friend. Welcome. And like I said, could you introduce yourself to everybody? And we'll jump right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad to be here. My name is Ruta Friend, and I am a community college teacher. I study gender studies, women's studies, sexuality studies, and then also rhetoric, which is sort of basically how people tell stories to get people to do certain things and act on certain beliefs. And I study community organizing and much to the chagrin of Christian nationalists, also Christian nationalism, right? So, and you heard my dog in the background there. But yeah, I'm glad to be on the show.
Anyone who is the chagrin of Christian nationalists is a friend of mine. Uh,
Right.
if you haven't met Tim Whitaker yet, you really need to. He's incredible. I love his work.
I do
Um,
too. Yeah, we have some plans to do a live here soon. So
oh, awesome.
yeah, yeah.
I've had him on twice before,
Oh,
and
very
he's
cool.
so incredible. He's really knowledgeable, down to earth, um, and yeah, just a really good guy doing the right things, and deconstructing his faith, and helping others deconstruct theirs in a healthy way. And I think that's one of the things we need to talk about is healthy and what is the difference between unhealthy and healthy. And so I put out a post or a note the other day talking. It was a response, I think, to something that Fred Pogue had put out. And I know you know Frederick Pogue. I've seen you on with him before, and he's
Yeah.
incredible. And he put out a post of an Andrew Tate excretion or whatever they want to call it. I call them excretions because it's just a bunch of shit they put out anyway. So
Very
why
scatological.
I like to be real. I'm good. I like words. I think words are fun.
Same.
And using the right ones make people happy, but they also piss the right people off. Um,
Agreed.
so I like doing that. But I put out a response to it because it's really dangerous what they're doing. They're confusing sexuality and sexual orientations and gender identity, and pretty much they're trying to just confuse and put out dangerous misinformation. And what Andrew Tate said was, in 2025, if you're a straight man with a girlfriend, you're gay. And I was like, I don't I don't even know where to take that on like a human level, but I'd love for your opinion, and we can go from there.
So many thoughts. I want to say that, like, for me, the first thing is that what they're doing that is so toxic around gender and sexuality and also gender identity is inextricable from white supremacy, which is sort of this demand, right, that everyone be a copy of a copy of a copy, right? And any kind of
Yeah,
diversion from that, right, is seen as some kind of threat. Right. So everything about the way that they are articulating anything around, I don't even know if they can access desire, TBH, like when it comes to, like, my guess is from the ways that they speak. that they don't even have an embodied sense of themselves, right? Like they feel at home in themselves, that they feel at home with their desire. And all of that is toxic, yes, but it is also part and parcel of white supremacy. And that feels like really, really important to point out, just as it's important to point out the history that existed within the Third Reich of the rules for thee, not rules for me, because there were
Yeah.
a tremendous amount of people who were put into concentration camps who were trans and who were queer at the same time that not that like the gay sex and gayness within Nazi culture was pretty pronounced, right? That's a historical fact that we know, right? So I'm not surprised to see this because that idealization and that homoeroticism has always been idealization of the copy of a copy, like the Ken doll, right, or whatever,
Yep.
has been part of a Nazi and a neo-Nazi and a white supremacist movement for a long time. There's a lot of fear of difference. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a really important point to make too, is it's not a new trend that this is like Nazism too, like that. A lot of it was based on older American traditions, but it was also based on Roman traditions and some of this Roman like idealism and like the gladiator thing is like that ideal structure of a man, or but also the soft boys and the femboys that Nick Fuentes goes into, where he has found a way to say that it's not gay to have sex with other men if you're a man, because only men know how to truly pleasure a man. Women are for procreation, and it's not gay to get pleasure, because that was a Roman thing. Or like they believe in this weird subculture around like it's not, what they're doing isn't gay. Is they're so convinced that what, because they hate themselves so much. And I think you're right in a lot of that is it's the the mindset is because they hate themselves. Like they don't know how to express their own sexuality healthily and their own personalities healthily, that they have to lash out and hurt other people in the process of trying to get pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, it is so, I mean, and it's so, I mean, this has been here in all these echoes. Like, I think about all of the many women who function as beards for closeted Republican men, right?
Yeah.
Um, like this has been a thing for a really long time, but it also it speaks to a relationship to women that is profoundly hateful as well, right? That women are just. I believe that Pete Hegseth, his pastor, sees women as like basically containers, right, for other
Yeah.
making other people.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's about a vessel. You like it's very specific to them, is you're a vessel for a baby, or women are vessels for children.
right.
And that allows them to get further into the line of like pedophilia too, because they're like, oh, once you're able to procreate, you're a woman, so now you're able to be a vessel, and so it's not bad. Like that's, they get into some weird logic to get to really disgusting things.
Right. Well, and there's also early, and this is also really important. This is actually when I the first time I read The Body Keeps the Score, I had to set it down and like walk away from it for like 6 months because there was a footnote in there that talked about published peer-reviewed scholarship that said that it was okay for male relatives to molest their daughters or their grandchildren because it prepared them for marriage. So like this, it's not even about fertility, right? Like it is this profound thingification of women and any other person who, you know, has indoor plumbing, right? You know, and can have, you know, can have kids. But it's just this, you know, I think that that's one of the things that I really want to highlight too is that when we're talking about evil, it can seem so ephemeral, but it's actually pretty tangible. Anytime you turn another human being into a thing, that's pretty much the definition of evil. And
Yeah.
what Nick Fuentes is saying there is not only a denial of his own clear desire for men, right? But this idea that women should also be subjected, because it's kind of like, I can't be gay unless I'm also shoving these other people down and talking about them as less than human and putting them in their place, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's
That's
really, yeah,
And that's a danger too. Like that is part of the huge dangers. It's about putting women into their place. And it's all patriarchal. It's all based on the fact that these men who are most likely inadequate in a lot of ways, either emotionally, sexually, physically, some way they are inadequate. They feel, at least they feel inadequate. They've been told they're inadequate. So they take that inadequacy out on other people, often really violently.
yes,
And you're not saying anything I have never heard before around, like, especially around folks who are in the more deeper side of the Christian nationalism, where it's not a sin to, in their eyes, they're taught that it's not a sin or it's not adultery if the person is not, if the woman is not married or the girl is not married, as long as they're over the age of 14. They're basically an object that can be used. You're submissive to the male figure that is the head of your household at all times. It's this umbrella of God, your pastor, your father, your oldest male relative over the age of, I think it's 11 is for boys, is that they start getting like privileges to be considered men. It's like 11 or 13. And then girls and women, like the wife is under her son if that son is over the age of 13 and her husband died. He is her male figure. He then She then has to submit to him in all things. And that's what they're taught is women and girls have to submit to men in all things, and even boys into all things. And this is why I think so many of these teenagers are so drastically aggressive, is because they're told there's no consequences, and it's not a sin, because if they're not married, it's not adultery. Only if they're married. But if you have if you say violate that girl, that teenager, rape her, she becomes then yours
right.
until you marry her. And that's not an issue for them. Like that's part of the game for them. And to me, it's disgusting. I mean, I have a daughter and I have a son, and I'm a human being who has been taught empathy and like just basic moral values, and that's disgusting. um,
Yeah,
but it
it
feels
is.
so rampant.
It is rampant, and I mean, part of it, and I mean, you know, part of it is that Christian nationalism, and I say this, I was talking to a friend about this for a long time. I was just like, listen, Christian nationalism isn't Christianity, right? It's not. It is cherry picked verses of Old Testament scripture that they use to justify their own dominance, right? And I had a friend of mine he's in his 70s. He's a Quaker pastor, and he's like, it's not gospel based. Christian nationalists don't believe in the gospel. They don't even believe in their own Messiah, right?
Yeah.
What it is a mechanism to use religious scripture to prevent. It's like it's domestic abuse, right? Where it's like you
Mhm.
have no way out. And part of the reason why they have, and this is the same thing with like, you know, white supremacy and white Christian nationalism, it's like the Venn diagram is a circle. But the whole point is, the whole reason why they're anti gay, the whole reason why they're anti trans is because they don't want anybody to find a way out of the system where they have to be a copy of a copy of a copy. And then anyone who's not a white man falls underneath of them. They don't want anyone to break out of the system.
Pardon the dogs
Oh, that's
barking.
okay. That's okay. I just earlier in our live, I had to take a I made my husband and I made some. Have you ever seen those? those dough ornaments you can make with like salt and flour
Yeah.
or whatever. So I
Yeah, I
was
used
like,
to make those when I was younger.
yeah, so we were just making them, and my dog had them in his mouth earlier at this. So like I was like, please shoot. So, I
Don't
understand.
eat the homemade Play-Doh.
Don't
Don't
eat,
do that.
yeah. And he knows it's salty too. And he's like, I still can't help it. He's like, why aren't these
They
real cookies?
they are salty. I have tried them because they're not toxic. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're a kid, you put anything in your mouth, and
you're
man, are
right.
those things salty.
They are. And I couldn't believe that my dog was just like he kept on trying. And I'm like, dude, you don't need to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to have a salt lick for the day.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I guess, but you're right though. Kids absolutely,
They absorb
absolutely do that
everything,
stuff. Yeah, and I mean,
and
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
they absorb. One of the things I've noticed, and I want your, because I've had a lot of good discussions on this, and mostly with men, because I do a lot of male issues. I talk a lot about masculinity
Which is great.
and how we can actually pause it. Thank you, and I'm glad it's getting through. I've heard a lot of really good feedback from what we're doing, and I'm glad of that because it means we're doing the right thing,
Mhm.
um, and it's it's the kids absorb everything from their parents and from the people around them. And one of the things that I've noticed is that kids absorb the most is that talk is how you reward a behavior, and what the reward is, either from a negative behavior or a positive behavior. But we tend to reward negative behaviors a lot more than we do positive in our
Mm.
society. And I want to get your thoughts a little bit on that, on how that plays into maybe like where Nick Fuentes or Andrew Tate might be coming from, or where it's like kind of built into like how we view things. And if that's a bad question,
No, no,
let
no,
me
no,
know.
no. It's not. I mean, I think, all right, so there are two things that I do want to talk about the off ramp for men as well.
Mhm.
I want to loop back to that, but I see what um I see what these two individuals have as a kind of attachment disorder, in the sense that it is very clear to me that they have not been resonated with and not been attuned to as individuals. And I think that when you grow up in a home that ignores you, that doesn't positively reinforce you, you grow up to be someone like Nick Fuentes or Donald Trump who lashes out in nastiness because it's the only time that you get attention. And then you feel
Yeah,
validated from that. Even if it's negative attention to you, you're getting more attention than you did before. And so it's a way to like sublimate the desire to be seen, right? But
yeah,
they're walking attachment disorders. And I don't mean disordered as in like they're it's a walking unhealed wound is what I mean to say.
yeah,
I hate using the word disordered for a lot of different reasons, but it is very clear to me that they have been traumatized around early attachment, and that it shows up in the way that they behave around other people. And it shows up in that cruelty and that viciousness. And I also think there is a financial impetus to this as well, where they know that their message is going to get shared and going to get monetized because everyone's going to share it in outrage. And then it also grooms other individuals to start believing those same things, right? So there's like a multi-layered reason why I think that they're at the sort of social and emotional place
yeah,
they are. But I do also want to go back to the off ramp for men, in
yeah,
particular. So, and here I mean cisgender heterosexual men. So hear me out. One of the things that has been so I have been teaching since 2002, and I've been teaching gender studies since 2008, so a long time. And initially I used to get sort of nervous in my like women's gender and sexuality studies classrooms because in a lot of cases it's like an elective class that everybody can take, and there are, I think, sometimes cisgender straight men who take those classes, and at first they're like, am I going to be victimized, and they're like super defensive. But when we start talking about gender roles and gender expectations, a lot of pain comes up from them, and they're like, like sometimes I feel like I can't drink a drink that I want because I'm worried about it being gay, or I have to get my ice cream in a cup with a spoon because if I lick it, someone's going to call me an F word if I'm licking an ice cream cone. And one of the things that I think is profoundly healing for a lot of the guys, and I mean, there have been hundreds of guys who have electively taken the class, right? They could have taken anything else, but they chose this class. And, I think that there's something healing that happens for them when they realize that patriarchy doesn't feel good for anybody, just like white supremacy doesn't feel good for anybody. It puts you in a straitjacket, it puts you in a corset, and it is constrictive for them too. So I think that people like Nick Fuentes also experience a lot of panic. Even apparently, some of our Democratic senators, as we're seeing texts being leaked, have a lot of panic around even straight cisgender men having like the freedom to be like, I want to paint my nails today. I want to dye a streak in my beard purple, right? I want to take a glam shots with glitter in my beard and show up at a Halloween party for a masquerade ball. That panics them because, again, white supremacy requires you to be a copy of a copy of a copy. And the thing is, when you give up your authenticity to become a copy of a copy of a copy, what you end up with is a wound that cannot be filled, right? And
Mhm.
so there's this bitterness, but they're just as terrified from, like, I'm thinking of, I'm not 110%, but I feel like I have seen even in the last couple of years, folks like, I don't know, like Lenny Kravitz, like wearing like kind of a skirt on a red carpet thing, looking
Yeah,
fantastic. But these things freak them the fuck out, right?
it does.
They are not, and you can see it too in the Department of Homeland Security's like AI slop propaganda, where all of their defend the homeland, they all look like, fucking Ken dolls with vacant eyes. This is like, it's a real thing, but it causes unhappiness for them as well. And I think
Yeah,
that like Nick Fuentes thinks that because he has some recognition and he has a number of followers, that he can trade that in for authenticity, that he can trade that in for feeling at home in his own body and feeling at home in his own desire, because an entire world opens up for you where you can feel desirable, where you can feel that you can access pleasure, where you can experiment and in whatever way that you want, that feels like a way that you were being true to yourself, that he does not have access to, and the people that follow him do not have access to. And the saddest part is, while they're trying to sell people dominance, it also feeds into that same loneliness epidemic because no one wants to be in a relationship with a person who's a giant asshole.
yeah. You've said so much truth in there, and I loved everything you said.
Thank
And
you.
it,
I'm sorry if I said too many words all at once there, but yeah.
no, it hits at home, and I can resonate with it. Is the thing is they're not right now, but I paint my nails fairly often. One of the reasons I do it is because it helps you stop biting your fingernails because it's
Mm,
gross to eat painted fingers. Like it's
real.
also highly toxic, so don't do it.
Don't do it, friends.
But it's also a great way to show that I'm a safe person to be around. Like it's a
Right.
simple way for me to just be like, oh, I can paint my nails one because I want to, and I think it looks good and I like it. And it makes me feel good to go get a pedicure and a manicure and have my nails and hands done and have my eyebrows waxed and my face massaged and all of that stuff. It feels good. It's okay, men, especially men who look like me, because it took me a long time as to figure out who I was. I'm happily married for 10 years. I have a wife, I have kids. I'm pansexual. It's hearts not parts. My wife and I have both been open about that since we knew each other. Like neither both of us have pretty much said that in a very positive way, and it allows us to have a really healthy monogamous relationship because we know what we want. We're not stuck fighting each other on gender specific roles or gender needs, but we've also been able to deconstruct what we need to. Like over the past 6 months, I got fired on my last day of work in tech, I was a
Mm.
senior DevOps engineer for a startup company. I had over 6 years experience, and I got fired on the 4th of July was my last day. Well, the first thing I did afterwards was I leaned on the fact that I have a degree in music theory and composition, and I wrote poetry, and I put it
Excellent.
on Substack, and I was like, you know what? I've gone through enough therapy and I'm okay with myself, who I am. I've accepted who I am as a person. I'm not afraid to put out my creative side, and it got a really wonderful reception. It's so hard to do that the first time, though.
Yeah.
Like, I so understand some of these men, why they're afraid. I understand because I've been there. Like, I was at one point afraid to think that I might enjoy what a man looks like. My wife and I both look at men and women like there's a reason we go to rock concerts, because it's fun to look at people, and people go as their authentic selves to concerts and things like that, and we're okay with it. Other men, a lot of these men, you're probably pansexual. You're probably, it's okay that you think other men might be attractive. It's okay to have those thoughts because it's normal. Like, that's a, and it's, I feel like I shouldn't have to be saying these things, but I've realized that there's a void in the conversation if we just don't say them. Like, the right wing is so happy to say the things, or people who are not even the right wing, the black pillars, these nihilists and these extremists like Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate, who do grift and thrive on hate, is they do it because the space is there and no one told them they couldn't do it. Whereas a lot of us on who are more progressive men have heard for a long time, white men don't have a podcast. Like, stop having a podcast, man. Like, just giving another man a microphone. We don't need that. Well, we found out we kind of do. Like, we need men who are not toxic. Like myself, I'll proudly say I'm not a toxic man for a lot of it. I have a lot to learn and grow, but I think I'm pretty untoxic in a lot of ways. Shane Urich, who's in our audience, Walter Ryan, Will Fullerton, or Fullwood that I had on today, Chris Goldsmith, Will, like tons of men who are out here putting themselves out here now. We realize there's just a void, and we cannot stay silent because the other side isn't, and they're convincing people that that's okay. Um,
Yeah.
how do you feel about like that idea? Is like
I
the
love I
growth
love
of some of us coming out?
I love that. Like I love I think it is really, really important. And I mean, at the very beginning of this, one of my first challenges as a gender expansive person who's really kind of on the chopping block was like, hey, men, you really need to start having conversations with other men. And I think that it's so interesting because I think that it's really easy to just ask. Sometimes, I mean, again, if I go back to my own experience teaching, like I could see the moment where where again, like a white cisgender straight dude was like, wow, shit, like I don't feel free. Like if I know that if I paint my nails or if I do a certain thing and then I get bullied for it, that's not freedom. That doesn't feel good. Like I don't want that for myself. And I think that while I think for a very long time there has been a $1 billion campaign, I am sure, to vilify anything around feminism, to vilify anything around LGBT studies, right? In part because they don't want people to have these conversations. Because here's the thing to understand about gender: all of us, regardless of your gender identity, the way that you first learned about your gender was because someone told you you were doing it wrong. Ouch. I don't I will bet my paltry savings account on it. But in
Yeah,
this, and yeah, I mean, like, because it's like all it is policing, right?
yeah,
And that does not feel good. And it it collapses your relationships. It causes a lot of resentment in interpersonal relationships. It also shows up in social situations where we start to attack people who are more authentically themselves, not because there's anything wrong with them, but because it is very clear that they are standing in a freedom that someone else doesn't feel like they can access, because they are still in the paradigm where they live in their body and in their desire and in their gender to please other people. Yikes. And that, I don't mean yikes as in like judgment, but like yikes as in, isn't it time for us to change that story? And I think that that's part of the reason why Christian nationalists are so panicked in this moment. And I feel like they feel like, oh my God, it's too late. And I fucking hope it's too late, because I feel like there are still a lot of men who understand what a fucking Ponzi scheme toxic white masculinity is, white supremacist masculinity. I think they know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's okay for us to admit it too, like that we know, like one of the first things I really realized after I got out of the tech field, and I am a tech deconstructionist because of this, is the tech field is a reflection of Christian nationalism and white supremacy as a culture or as a profession in terms of patriarchy. It is hyper toxically masculine. It is hyper bully focused. It is on the idea of only competition and not collaboration. And it steals and forces you to be there the whole time. I worked for 6 years, 6+ years as a software engineer. In those 6 years, the last two of them, I probably worked 80% of my waking hours,
Wow.
almost every day, 5 to 6 to sometimes 7 days a week. Do you like that hurt my family? That hurt me, one, physically and mentally. I have fibromyalgia. I suffer from daily migraines, and they knew and they didn't give a shit. And
Nope.
it was just work, work, work. And it took away in my, and I was lucky in all of this because I'm still married and I've been happily married for 10 years. Is I was lucky my wife didn't leave me and my kids didn't leave because their father and their husband was gone the whole time. Was I wasn't there. The tech space is sick and it's a reflection of this toxic masculine culture. And guess what, guys? It's okay to not do that. Like being a 10 or 100 Xer is not the goal. That's not healthy for you. That's 80 hours a week of work. That's never getting a pay raise, but always getting expectation raises. That's not healthy. And when I started coming back out of this, I'm nicer to my family. Like I speak nicer. I am less emotionally volatile myself. I've gone through years of therapy for anger issues and for trauma from the military. And like I work on them. And it's okay to do that because I took accountability. Like Courtney said in the chat, is it's accountability to recognize there was a problem, but I had to get out of this system to figure it out. I don't want people to have to always leave this system, but I want the culture to change. And that's really where it is we need to help change that culture of like it's okay to be creative as a man. It's okay to feel joy. It's okay to feel more than happy, sad, mad. Like
Right.
there's more than three emotions, guys. There's a lot of subtle emotions in there, and happy, sad, and mad are child descriptions for things
Yeah.
that you can speak about.
Yeah, and it's so real that you said this, because I was just on a Substack live earlier, and I was talking about how important. Well, going back to emotions, it's so important to understand what emotions are, because they are information, and a lot of times you'll hear things like women are too emotional for leadership positions, or
God, men are so much more emotional.
well, and here's the other thing though. It's that this white supremacist culture does not teach us emotions on purpose, because if you had access to your feelings and you knew that your emotions were information telling you very important stuff that guides your discernment and your actions, you would make entirely different choices that would be a threat to white supremacy, right? And so I think there are a lot of people, even beyond men. I think the difference is that um, because men are policed, they come to their emotions a lot later in life, and part of that has to do with age in the brain. I don't know if you remember when John Boehner was Speaker of the House.
I do.
Okay, so I remember this moment where he cried, and I don't even remember what he cried about. What I remember is all the shit he got for crying. And the reason why this is important is because as people's brains age, they have more capacity to like onboard their emotions and sort of understand it, right? But I
Hmm.
think that adult men come to their emotions later because they're shamed out of them, and then they pathologize that onto women who, or gender expansive people, and say you're too emotional. But what they really mean is you're in touch with your emotions and you are not going to let me violate your boundaries. So I'm going to make that seem like a problem and tell you you have too much of this thing, when in fact it guides your discernment without, like, even if we're talking about AI and this idea of like, oh, perfection with computers. And there's a reason why AI hallucinates, because for actual intelligence, you need an ephemeral, like you need a body that is not going to be here forever. And you need emotional discernment because those are the values that guide your choices. AI has neither one of those things, right? Um,
Hmm.
so it's what I'm trying to say is, but I'm not surprised that the thought of that emerges from like a white supremacist like Elon Musk, right? Or
Yeah.
whomever, right? Like it's just because it's this giant fear of emotions. I mean, and even the idea of like what empathy is, I forget what, yeah.
Yeah, like empathy is evil or whatever they called it. But like that's no. Like empathy is a huge piece of this. And I asked the question earlier is like, isn't it, or Walter Ryan said something earlier and I think I commented on it. Well, at least I imagined I did. Was like, isn't it easier just to be nice? Like,
Mm.
isn't it? It's just easier. Hate is taught. Like, you don't come out of the womb hating people. You're taught how to hate other people. And
Correct.
like, it's so sad that that is the discourse that is like predominant still. Like, we're at the age of AI, we're at the age of technological expansion where we're going up the exponential curve and we hit that up point. Like, we're right there. We're right about to get into cool shit like space. Like, we could go explore space. But instead, we're arguing about, or not you and me, but like the nation and the world as a whole are arguing whether gay people should be allowed to still be married. Like, we're getting back to that argument, or like women should be allowed to vote because you somehow are lesser, or women are somehow lesser. Like, I'm not going to live in a society where I have to tell my daughter she's lesser than her brother or
Right, or that trans
anyone.
people shouldn't get to exist. I mean, and every, or the immigrants are all threats and we should just pause asylum
We
seekers.
were all immigrants at one point.
Unless you are First Nations, unless you were part, unless you and your family are victims of the chattel slavery system, like yeah, like but all of these panics, they're manufactured, right? Like one of the things that I've talked about, and I bang the drum as loud as I can, but there was a moment where we had like the transgender tipping point, and Laverne Cox was on the cover of Time magazine, and and then just a little bit like 2 years later, the Me Too movement happens, and all of these rich white cisgender men who are have very toxic views about women and girls and boy
Mhm.
children start being exposed for who they are, and then you see this locking of arms between these malignantly I don't want to call them rich, malignant hoarders and white Christian nationalists be like, let's get together and create a new demon. It's going to be trans people, and they're going to be the ones who are really the danger to women and children. And the shittiest part about that, too, is that they relied on people's lack of familiarity around trans people. And they're like, aren't you scared of trans people in your locker room? And it's like, man, they just want to go in there and change. They just want to do their thing, right? They're more open, they're more likely to be an object of harm, right? But the important part is that they were trying to create a scapegoat for their own shit. So we're
Yeah.
here at this moment because they want us fighting about what is gayness or not. Should trans people be allowed to exist? Should we just round up every immigrant and open, you know, all of this stuff is to keep people fighting and to keep people suspicious and worried about who they associate with, right?
Hmm.
Because they don't want people talking about the fact that white nationalists are robbing us blind and then, you know, destroying our democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. They want to distract us with culture wars and culture issues that aren't really wars or issues. Like trans people are people, and that's it. End of statement. Women are people. Men are people. Trans people are people. People
Right.
are people. That's it. That's it. We all should be treated equally. We should aim for an equal and just society. That equality doesn't equate equity, though. And that's where people get confused in some ways. And that's where men specifically, I think, like to parse words and nonsense and be very destructive about it. Is it always stems, like you said, from the white nationalism and the patriarchy, and which is a very American tradition, which the Nazis were influenced by. For anyone who in the audience who don't know, like the Nazis were influenced by American fascism.
Right. We were their
American,
mood.
yeah, we were their influence.
Yeah.
So this is an American issue that we need to confront. Is white people specifically are for some reason more willing to be grouped together so that they can hate somebody else if they are deemed as lesser than, because it lets them unify with the rich white man who they think they might become. Which, by the way, white guys, we're never going to be the rich white dude who's a dragon and who hoards all their wealth and has, if your dream is like women hanging on your arm or whatever your dream is, like, or sports cars or a basketball court in your backyard and a pool and 15 different cars, like if that's your dream, great, man. That's a shitty dream. Like that's all about capitalism. Your dream should be, I want to have a happy marriage. I want to leave a good influence on the world. I want to leave a legacy that was positive and that helped people and that made people better. Like if you're in a religion and you're a religious leader, wouldn't you want to help your community rather than harm them? Like all of God's children, all people were created in God's image. That's the Christian belief, isn't it? Like that means non-religious people are created in God's image. That means trans folks are created in God's image. That means God is trans because God can be whatever the hell God wants. God is gender fluid. God is whatever the fuck God wants to be. I don't believe in God, but a God would be gender fluid. Like, aren't they omnipotent? Aren't they all powerful? That means they can change genders, right? Like they can identify how they feel and need to be who they authentically are themselves. And that's, so if you're made in the image of God, like it's cool. It's cool. We don't have to hate each other for that. But we're arguing over stupid shit instead of talking about, like, not too long ago NASA found that there's very possible good signs of life on Mars, or like previous organic life on Mars, or that the universe is probably twice as old as we thought it was, because there are stars that we can now see by the James Webb Telescope that are further out than the universe should exist in terms of light. And we're finding this shit out and we're not even talking about it. Instead, we're fighting over, should gay people be married? Should trans people be able to go to a bathroom in public?
Should
Like,
they be able to exist? I mean, literally,
should they be able to live at all?
right. Yeah, I
Like,
mean, yeah, and that's so important because after Charlie Kirk,
God, I hated him.
he, you know, he caused a lot of pain for a lot of people, and I am sure that one of those people was also himself. However, comma, when whoever the shooter was, everyone was like, before they even found the suspect, they're like, this is a trans person, right? And then all the people were like, trans people must not be allowed to live. We've abided by these creatures so much. And it's like, do you even fucking know a trans person? Because your only risk is that we're going to ask you to play Ticket to Ride at some tabletop game, right?
Good
That,
game too.
huh? What was
Good
that?
game too.
It is. I love that game. I usually try to pretend that I'm confused when I'm playing Ticket to Ride. Like I'm really distracted by my cards so that people can't see that I'm trying to build this like multi. Anyway, I digress. So now I've given up my trick. So no one's gonna play Ticket to Ride with me anymore. But anyway, my point here is we're not threatening people, but I think that the idea is that they are relying on people's lack of knowledge. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really heartbroken in this moment and also not surprised that one of the first things that they did was, that stupid executive order and this idea of gender ideology, which I kind of want to talk about because white supremacy is the gender ideology, right?
Yeah.
Imposing your views about how the world should look, right? And how people should be. That is ideology, right? That is ideology, right? So, and that feels really important because while they started with non binary trans people, right? The whole painting non binary trans people is ridiculous, even though we have been around since before the gender binary was even existed, right?
Yes.
It's bananas to me. I've lost my point here, and I really wish I could get. I'm so sad that so many gender studies programs and so many LGBT studies programs and women's studies programs are getting ripped out of colleges because for the first time, this is like college is some of the first times where people unlearn some of the toxic things that they were like socialized to believe in their families about who they could be or not. Like my own mom, she got in trouble for going to college instead of secretary school because there's this idea that women can only be a certain thing, right? When I went to college, my mom was like, "Oh, don't worry, you're stupid. So all you need is a Mrs. degree." But like, all I'm trying to point out here is that everybody comes into the university space or the community college space or any other learning space with wounds, and through their own inquiry realizes, "Oh shit, there is so much more to life than I was told," and I feel very sad. And I think that these courses are being canceled by capitulating universities, right? Who don't even have the integrity to be like, fine, if you're a state and you want to cancel these gender studies programs, we're going to teach them under independent studies things and mask them and keep on teaching them. There are things that people could do because young people need those classes,
Yeah.
not because they're being indoctrinated by me. I am actually teaching an entire body of literature from across genres and disciplines that are helping, and then asking, what do you think about this? Where does this, what moves you here? What do you want to talk about, right? And they don't want that because they don't want you to have freedom. They want you to be disposable. They want you to be suspicious of other people. They want you to be a cog in the wheel.
Yeah. And I'm going to push back on a comment that we got in the chat from a really good friend who's in the chat. And I want to make sure I push back on this because I think there is a difference in what I'm saying. I don't think the comment was, I don't think bashing people with faith is fair. I disagree because faith-based people bash us with their faith all the time. That's literally what is happening right now. Is Christian nationalism is faith bashing us with toxic viewpoints that are not really Christian. I'm not bashing people with faith. I'm reminding them what their scripture actually says. And if that's bashing with faith, then the faith has an issue. Like, if I don't come at people who are religious who are good, if religion makes you a better person and your religion helps you and puts you on a track to goodness and to decency and to empathy and values, you're in the right religion. But if your religion teaches you hate but Christian nationalism is Christianity. It is because they use Christianity as the basis of their tools. It is. We cannot separate Christian nationalism from Christianity. The history of Christianity is spreading through violence. It's violence. They've spread the entire, yeah, and it might be heresy, but that's how Christianity has spread through its entire history. From Rome forward, Christianity has been violent and violent. And I'm not saying always for bad reasons. Sometimes they did really good things with the violence they did. The Crusades had some, there were some good parts of the Crusades. I'm not going to say it was all good. I'm not going to say it was all bad, but there were some parts where they actually did some decency, but it's all violence. It was spread through fear.
And
They
conquest.
and
Yeah.
conquest. They burned women in Salem for being witches, and they trampled a man for being pro witch because those women spoke their mind, because those women had an opinion that differed from their husband. And Christianity is the tool that has been used for generations. So has Judaism. I'm Jewish. So has Judaism. Judaism has a lot of patriarchy built into it too, but that's been deconstructed over time. But they are using faith to bash us, and they're using scripture and text, and they want to make a theonomy where they interweave Old Testament scripture and laws into civil laws. So I have to attack it as Christianity. I have to take on Mormonism. I have to take on the destructive nature of Jehovah's Witnesses, or of these little cults that spawn from these other groups, or Catholic nationalism. Like,
Opus
that's what
Dei.
they call themselves. That's the vehicle they use. That's the words and the terms and the history that they have. The Catholic nationalists, Opus Dei, groups like that, those use those as a vehicle. So I have, whether it's bastardized or not, they still call themselves that. We don't call Netanyahu not a Jewish person. Would you consider Netanyahu not Jewish? If you would consider him always as being Jewish, then it's the same. We have to. They may bastardize it all they want, but like, I have to use the tools that they throw in front of me, and that I'm given for this fight.
And I feel too, that to critique Christian nationalism, which resembles more of a cult than it does anything gospel based, and to just to like do a reality check, the entire time that we've been talking about white Christian nationalism, and if that is bringing up some sort of emotional response, I think that it's possible that you don't necessarily know enough about white Christian nationalism to know that it's like that thing about how uh, all pickles are cucumbers, but not all cucumbers are pickles, right? Just kind of like sharing that out there. But I also feel like there is a little bit of what I'm hearing as a kind of not all men knee jerk response here of like not all Christianity, and we could fill it in there. But here's the thing: if you have white skin privilege, all white people are your responsibility when it comes to having conversations around white supremacy, right? And the same thing is true for Christianity. The same thing is true for masculinity. The same thing
Mhm.
is true if you're cisgender. Transphobia is it's your responsibility to call into community other cisgender people. If you're a straight person, you are responsible for other straight people and calling them into community. And it is so easy to fall back into victimhood when somebody points out something about a socially dominant group who is being critiqued. But I just want to just do a reality based thing. And also, just PS, so that we're not talking about vilifying Christian people. I myself am not Christian. However, I am reading this lovely book by Howard Thurman called Jesus and the Disinherited, which is like super great. So I'm not gonna like sit here and accept this idea that I'm like anti-Christian or anti anything else, when I'm making a very specific point about
Yeah.
white Christian nationalism. And we are not attacking Christianity writ large, but we do have a collective responsibility to understand what socially dominant groups are, to
Mhm.
understand when we belong to them, and then to accept our responsibility for the ecology of the wider human tapestry to make sure that people are not being violent to other people. And but we're neither one of us have attacked Christianity writ large.
Yeah, and I want to make sure too, and I said it in the chat, is I appreciate the individual who is asking these questions, and I know their history a little bit
Yeah,
more.
and I don't see the chat, to be fair.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And so, and we've had discussions around this, around deconstructing Christianity, and sometimes too, I may just be further along in the point of deconstruction because I'm not Christian. I mean, French Catholic in my family, but I've always identified as being Jewish, as at least culturally, and ethnically. Like I'm a white male who has Jewish heritage. We can trace it all the way back. We know our family lineage, and I very specific, like it's hard to talk about the Jewish nationalism that is going on because I don't want to say all Jewish people either. I get it, because it's not all Jewish people, and I can't say, but it's like, just like you said, it's not all men, but it is, until we prove otherwise. um and I think right now, at this moment in America, it's on Christians and Catholics specifically, and whatever denomination of either one of those you are, is that you have to actively prove you are safe. You have to actively do it, not once, but every single day, over and over and over. And until that happens, Christians are unsafe for the most part in a lot of ways. And Christian nationalists specifically are unsafe because they want to harm us. They want to harm people like me. They've put people like me into cages and killed them and executed them. We all learned about it, called the Holocaust, the first Holocaust that we actually all really talk about. But it's not the only one that's ever happened. There are other events that would fit the legal definition of a Holocaust. Specifically, what's going on in Israel and Gaza can fit the legal definition of Holocaust. If you listen to Qasim Rashid Esquire, who I do, who's a very intelligent man, and he's a great example too of what positive masculinity can look like,
yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah, I
and
appreciate.
confronting beliefs.
Yeah, and I really appreciate his solidarity on so many topics too. And I feel like that's the thing to understand is that there's a difference between bashing and discomfort. And I think sometimes when you're in a dominant social group, experiencing feedback that causes discomfort, it's so much easier to be like, "Oh, you're bullying me." But you can't bully someone from below, right? Like it's like a situation where, if you're looking at the bully with the taking the lunch money. I'm not taking your lunch money. No one's taking your lunch money. You're just realizing that you're part of a larger group and you have a responsibility, but that discomfort is
Mm-hmm.
not the same as bashing. And I feel like it's important to hold space for that. We all experience that knee-jerk reaction too, because it's not like
Yeah.
I haven't been called out in and around a number of ways, especially as somebody who exists alongside a lot of sort of like what I would call sort of like I don't know, fault line identities in the sense that like my mom is Polish and Irish and my dad is Muncie, Delaware, and like living living at that intersection. And he was also Jewish before he converted to marry my mom and Catholicism. So I sit around a lot of fault lines. And so I've experienced that kind of discomfort. But I think it's really important to like feel into that and ask yourself what you're protecting. But I also want to hold up too, just because I feel like there have been a lot of Christians who have been standing on the lines and doing a lot of really cool direct action in this moment. And I really kind of want to hold that up too, right? So there are people who are respecting their faith by realizing that it is being abused by white Christian nationalists and they are standing up. And
Yeah.
so that's the only labor that I think, at least on my end, that I'm asking folks to do is like, if that is your faith, love your faith enough to protect it from the idolatry of white Christian nationalism.
I love that. I love that idea of protect your faith and protect, like, it's what I do, is protect your masculinity, is protect your families, is how do you protect something, is you want it to thrive. and you want it to succeed. And sometimes it also means getting out of the way. Like if you have a spouse who is going to have a business or has a job that is better than yours, and they need to move, and you're kind of reluctant. Men, I know this story a lot from people I've heard, is be willing to move for your wife or your spouse. Be willing to do those things, because protecting and defending doesn't mean you have to be the one making money. You can be at home protecting your family by taking over all of the traditionally feminine responsibilities, which, oh, by the way, guys, they're not. It's okay to be a dad. It's not dad time. It's be a parent.
Right.
That one always got me, was like when I had my kids were little and they were babies. They're like, "Oh, dad, you're babysitting your kids." I'm like, "No, the fuck, I'm not. I'm parenting my children." Um,
Right.
but anyway, that's a totally different conversation.
And
Uh,
but a worthy one, right? A
yeah,
worthy
but a
one.
worthy one.
Yeah, but I
I'd
feel
love to
like
have that one with you, or some of it,
yeah,
more of these, because I love this topic of like deconstructing how all of this arose and how it actually is just supremacy. And it's all about the white nationalism and how we can break it apart.
right, right. And I think that, I encourage everybody, and this touches everyone. Like I hear a lot as like a non-binary trans person, like I'll be in a store. I mean, sometimes I get flack or whatever, but like the amount of times that like uh especially straight white cisgender women will come up to me and be like, "I love your hair, but I could never cut my hair. My husband would hate it." Cut your fucking hair, man. Cut, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
cut your
But like,
hair.
do what I'm trying to say is like in this moment in particular, one of the smallest pieces of resistance that you can begin doing is to allow yourself to be free in your body and your gender, and to and how you express that, because you're doing that in defiance of this moment, which is trying to compress everybody into the same because they see difference as a threat. And I would love, by the way, Nick, to join you anytime you want to have conversations around gender, whether it's gender identity, whether it's gender roles, whatever it is, or sexuality. Super happy to do it. But yeah, like Nick Fuentes and all of his friends are unfortunately living in the cesspool of white supremacy, and it is a space that only brings annihilation to everyone who participates in it, including people like him.
Yes. Yeah. And instead of doing that, we like making spaces that are available for people and that are open for people. Like, I want a space that is for men to learn, but where women and people who are non-binary or gender fluid or anywhere in between, any category that's not strictly male female, because no one's really all the way there anyway. But I want a space where everyone can feel included, that men feel positive about being a part of and want to join in that conversation on. And
Yeah.
part of opening that space is having these conversations with folks like you and with everyone else, and it slowly switches over. Is I like being able to make this community larger too, and helping anyone in any way I can with my platform to get you out. And to expose you to as many people as I can in a positive way. And so I want you to sell yourself, and where people can find you and how they can support you. But also for anyone in the Substack chat, please, please, please go support your weirdo friend. They will be your new best friend in all of this. And I have really, really enjoyed getting to talk about this today. It's so much fun, and it just fits in with a lot of the things I talk about around intelligent masculinity, is what Evan Fields has started calling it. And I really like that, because like we're not dumb, and we want to be masculine. We just want to do it in a way that doesn't suck. Um, and so getting to talk to folks like you is amazing. So please, please sell yourself, and how people can support you.
So I'm your weirdo friend. You can mainly right now find me on Substack. Right now, because I've been very shy about turning on the payment system. So honestly, my stuff is free to subscribe, and I don't paywall anything. And I love reading my stuff, commenting on it, sharing it is a great support, because I try to share stories that I hope will shape back this moment, because I don't think that we realize how malleable this moment is. I think part of the reason why people are trying to scare you right now is so that you're in freeze mode, so that you don't shape back this profoundly malleable moment where really anything could happen. So I'm really grateful to be here. I hope to get to join you again. So thank you for inviting me.
You absolutely will be able to join me again. I cannot wait to have you on for some more discussions. I'll find a way to get you onto my other platform, Banner and Backbone, too, um, and get you out there, because I think you have a lot of good stuff to say. And this has just been a fun and intelligent conversation. And if you're on Substack, hit the subscribe in that top left corner. That subscribes you to both me and your weirdo friend. Subscribe for free, because they don't have it set for paid yet, but free. Get it out, restack, like, share, comment, all of it. Pass it on. Subscribe so you get it in your email box, and then forward it to your friends in your email. Like,
Yeah,
that's an
move past
option
that
too.
algorithm.
Yeah, bust the algorithm from behind and like push it out of the way, because they're not expecting us to do all of the things. And so just get it out there, do all the things, become a friend of your weirdo friend. Uh, and then when you're done, subscribe to me. Come hang out with me on
Yes.
Sick of This Shit Publications. We are doing incredibly well over here. We're having some great conversations like this one. It's all about community building and exposing and bringing out the best in people, and visibility where there's not always visibility. Like every Monday, my chronically ill show. We chronically ill out or chill out on Mondays to start out the week. And it's all about community building. So everyone, please come subscribe to me here at Sick of This Shit Publications. And again, subscribe to your weirdo friend and make them your new friend, and get all the message out there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been so much fun, and want to give you the last word before we close out the day. If you have anything else to say.
Love the stranger, not just the stranger who you don't know, but the stranger in yourself.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.